Police have the power to make arrests, but in Georgia, there's a lesser-known option that allows ordinary citizens to ask the courts to step in as well. Senior investigator Rebecca Lindstrom explains.
Here's a stack. All of these were different civil cases. The charge.
Nikki Arntz has a file box full of evidence. Documents, she says, proves the guy she hired to build her house, Larry Shepard, committed a crime.
He has a really good way of making you feel comfortable, that he's capable, and that he's honest, and at the end of the day, he's none of those things.
So how much had you already paid for cabinets?
Arntz says money for her cabinets and HVAC system went missing. She believes Shepard also overcharged her for other projects to pocket the money. She calls it theft and fraud. Police see it differently.
And their supervisor was very adamant that this was a civil case where he actually was convicted.
Arntz showed police previous civil lawsuits people had filed against Shepard.
How many civil lawsuits does it take before it becomes criminal? How long can someone take advantage of people like that before they're held accountable?
While her box didn't change their minds, it did reveal another option. Police noticed one case that wasn't a lawsuit. It was a conviction in 2007 that stemmed from a citizen arrest warrant. It is a process where anyone can ask the court to do what police won't. So she did.
It's a unique process in Georgia. It's an opportunity for an individual, as you said, who believes they have been wronged to come in and have a neutral third party hear this case.
Fulton's chief magistrate court judge, Cassandra Kirk, says the process varies by county, but the basics remain the same.
The burden of proof for our citizen warrant applications is the same as it would be for the law enforcement.
Then why aren't police just doing this?
And so police budgets are tight, as are all, and so each of us is prioritizing cases, and it may be that this police department does not have the staff to handle this type of case.
11Alive News Investigates filed open records requests with 4 metro counties and found of the nearly 12,000 applications filed in the past 3 years, less than 30% ended with a warrant. In White County, where Arntz made her request, it was less than 10%. About half were closed before a hearing, often because the parties went to mediation and reached a settlement. The rest were closed by the judge, usually for insufficient evidence.
I just felt like I was in Law and Order or something, like I called my witnesses, I had to ask them questions, and then Larry was able to get up and speak.
In court, Arntz's box paid off. Shepard was arrested on 3 counts of fraudulently misusing funds. We reached out to Shepard about the accusations, but in an email he said he couldn't comment. Now it is up to the district attorney's office to decide if it can prove the case to a jury.
It's scary. I hope and pray that I've provided them with enough information.
Arntz knows it's not a sure thing. Our investigation found the DA's office has only pursued indictments in roughly half of the arrest warrants issued in White County since 2023. Still hopeful, former clients of Shepard have followed her lead, getting charges or arrest warrants in Franklin and Gilmer counties, too.
One thing that I said to myself going into this was, I may not have been his first victim, but I want to be his last.
This is so interesting. It sounds a little like something out of a movie where you hear someone say citizen's arrest. So Rebecca is joining us now to talk more about these types of warrants. You said that the process works differently in different parts of the state. What do you mean by that?
Well, when I talked with the individuals that were in Franklin and Gilmer counties about their efforts to get the arrest warrants, they tried to follow Nikki's process but realized that they couldn't. Instead, they realized that they needed to, go through a different process. The courts there will actually just sometimes allow you to show enough evidence and then get the warrant on your own. So there was no hearing needed. Now, that said, I did realize that as you go through this process, you have to really be able to prove what it is that you are trying to say. In White, he appeared in court. He defended himself, he was able to state his case, and because he was physically there in the building, they were actually able to make the arrest at that point in time when the judge decided that he didn't have a good enough argument. And whereas if you're going to go through police and the police do the process, they have to find him or they have to have the time to go find him. So that's why, it really does vary.
How long does the process take?
Again, that depends. It depends on that process, I mean, if the person is there and you have that hearing, well, then that can happen pretty fast. But most metro counties are going to require you to show the evidence to the judge, who will then decide if there is enough to make a case. If so, the person accused is notified, they're given a date to appear, they hear the accusation, and the judge will usually tell the parties to sit down and talk with a mediator. In White County, it is actually required before the case moves forward. If that doesn't solve the issue, the case could be presented to a judge that day, or in some cases, another day will be set to allow the defendant some time to prepare. Court calendars, as we all hear, they're pretty full these days, so this process could take a few weeks, it could take a few months, and outcomes, they really do vary by county. That was really interesting to me because I thought what I'd see in one county, I would see in the others, and some of that could very well be determined by mediation, but here's some numbers, just stay with me and you'll see the range of what I'm talking about. So Fulton County, 9% of the cases that we looked at turned into an arrest warrant. But then you get all the way to Cobb County, that is 38%, and then you get into DeKalb, 44%. So 9 to 44%. And like I said, I have a feeling that whether they require you to have a police report before you can even file might have something to do with this. Whether you go to mediation before you have a hearing has something to do with it. So a lot of different factors.
Yeah, interesting to know, because that can manage even expectations of what can happen through that process. So you said that anybody could face charges.
It was very interesting because as I was talking with one of the judges, I had to sort of step back from them like, well, wait a minute, you mean anyone can face charges? Remember, these are open hearings. This isn't a place for revenge or false accusations. The judge is listening for the mention of a crime. The defendant might point out, hey, you broke the law first, in which case both of you could face charges.
Are there any common misunderstandings about all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big ones is what gets people to this point in the first place, and that is that, these hearings are about facts. They're not about feelings. You have to have evidence that a crime was committed and that the person you are accusing really is the person who did it. There's the confusion over what is a civil case versus a criminal one. Civil cases typically involve disputes over money or contracts and are handled through lawsuits, not arrests. There are elements of both, though sometimes in a case, both things could be true. In Nikki's case, her claim of poor workmanship, for example, that's civil. But she believes he fraudulently misrepresented his company. And of course, the financial allegations are potentially criminal. Now, I asked Chief Judge Kirk what she saw coming through her court.
I'd say common ones include theft. Someone's taken someone's property. They know who took it, but the police didn't pursue charges. Bad checks. Bad checks are a good number of these. Simple battery between neighbors and acquaintances. Criminal trespass. Harassing communications that have crossed the line. And so, right, we see a lot of cases where there was some pain and no response. We see a lot of those.
Again, no one is tracking these outcomes. So when I was interested in doing this story, I had to essentially create the database myself. And so I went through every one of the cases in White County, admittedly, because there'd be fewer of them. And what I found was that, I went through the past 3 years and also found cases from, these are fights that led to injuries and personal damage, stolen or damaged medications, defamation of character after a series of social posts. Most of these are family or neighbor disputes that someone feels led to a crime. And I have to say, it was kind of sad just to read these cases and see the neighbors and the families with these types of frictions. But, there still are crimes that are committed, even if you live close to each other.
Sure, friction that gets to that level. So many of the stories that you are really investigating and diving deep into come from a tip. Did this one come from a tip, somebody wanting you to look into this?
It did, but not exactly the way we first received it. She had a bad contractor situation and she wanted us to look into that. And as I was talking to her about this process, she started saying, hey, I filed this citizen arrest warrant. What do you think? And that's when I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You can do that? We have covered so many cases of people who have that tension between, is it civil, is it criminal? They feel like they just can't get any accountability. So this really was something that I wanted to dive deeper into, not necessarily because of what Nikki was telling us in the first place, but because of the mechanism she's used to try to get that accountability.
Just have a couple of seconds left. What happens next?
It is now up to the district attorney to take it to the grand jury, decide what the grand jury believes happened in this case. I will say, important to say, Larry Shepard has not admitted any wrongdoing. So if this does turn into an indictment, he will get a chance to defend himself in court.
All right. Thank you so much. Really interesting. We'll be right back.